rumors have it that yes, ATACMS are coming here, and again, in many ways, this bill is a breakthrough in terms of you know multiple red lines in terms of weapon types being sent to Ukraine, such as ATACMS, the same ATACMS that were like a no-go zone for many months, and they actually ended up being sent to Ukraine in a very obsolete form, and Ukraine ended up using them and getting insane results with the Russian airfields in occupied Crimea, with Russian airfields wiped out by these obsolete ATACMS. And the sky is not falling on the earth, and no nuclear weapons are being applied in this. No nuclear holocaust is happening. What happens is Russia sustaining a heavy blow on their military capacity and their ability to go on.
Hello and welcome to Frontline for Times Radio. I'm James Hansen, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Illia Ponomarenko, one of the co-founders of Ukraine's fastest growing English language media platforms, the Kyiv Independent, and the author of the forthcoming book, I Will Show You How It Was, the story of wartime Kyiv. Illia, really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Hello.
I want to start by just getting your reaction, and we will, of course, come on to the book because it's a fascinating new book, but I want to start by getting your reaction to the big news from the weekend, which is, of course, that US Congress has finally, after months of delays, passed this more than $60 billion of military aid for Ukraine. What's your reaction?
Well, I'm not going to lie that that moment was full of rejoicing here in Ukraine, in all layers of the internet and also, real life, including the front line, troops on the front line. It was a great sign of relief because with all this crisis, with all the general situation that we have right now, we came as close to being in a critical situation as possible, just a step away from that. So, of course, very increasingly uneven and seemingly unrealistic success of this aid against so many odds, of course, there was a new hope. It's not solving all the problems, I'm not going to lie. It's not giving us a 100% chance for victory, but still, it is a chance. It is a chance to carry on. But without it, I don't think that we will make it by the end of this year. Maybe, probably. So, of course, that was a sign of relief, although it was not 100% answer to this. But I must say that many in Ukraine were, of course, deeply dissatisfied about, the American inaction, all this political strife in which Ukraine and many countries, the general security situation in Europe and beyond became a hostage to this strife, to these political games. Of course, there's been a lot of dissatisfaction, a lot of disappointment about the American allies, and because we spent more than a year and a half of the full-scale war being absolutely 100% certain about the Americans. That was one of the things that we never had any doubts about, is that, in America we have bipartisan support because America understands how important it is to keep Ukraine standing and fighting and winning this war. But it appears that we don't have rock solid ground on this anymore. So, of course, that was a sign of relief and a new hope and a chance to carry on. So, God bless people who work in this.
And in terms of the difference it will actually make on the battlefield, it's interesting, Illia, you say that without this, you fear that Ukraine might have folded by the end of the year.
Yeah, of course, but because, we have a situation under which a lot of time has been wasted. A lot of time. It's on the Ukrainian side, but also from the Western side too, because in the first year of the full-scale invasion that brought immense Ukrainian successes in repelling Russian invasion, everybody got to this overly optimistic opinion that Russia has lost. This sentiment that touched upon regular people and also decision makers. And Putin has already lost. It's okay. It's not okay. So it's just a step away from victory. But instead of that, instead of mobilizing defense production in the West, instead of getting ourselves prepared for longer war, for a decisive advantage over Russia, which was very much possible 2 years ago and a year and a half ago. We in Ukraine and also in the West, we wasted a lot of time, way too much time, and despite having a lot of time and wasting them, we end up in a situation in which the American aid, it constitutes maybe, upon my feeling and my estimates, close to 75-70% of the entire Ukrainian defense effort. So U.S. aid and what depends on the U.S. aid constitutes a lot of critically important things like air defense munitions, the systems, munitions for artillery, extremely important weapon in this war, one of the central weapons in this war. It's an artillery war, without which you can barely do something. There are little things to substitute artillery, such as FPV drones, but still, and also the maintenance and of armored vehicles such as Bradley vehicles, which are extremely important. So uh, after more than 2 years of this total war, we are still heavily, hugely, insanely dependent on the U.S. aid, like I said, and we're still um, not doing enough in Ukraine and also beyond Ukraine to mitigate this dependency and also ensure a broader stability and more advantage in terms of defense production, in terms of the constant inflow of weapons, of supplies, of everything over Russia. And I think that it's not about making a difference. It's still not enough. It's still not 100% enough because, frankly, nothing is enough. No money is enough. No amount of defense aid would be enough because it's a huge war. It's a black hole of materials, of everything. But what's the difference now is that this package gives us probably a year to finally come to our senses, mobilize defense production, fix a lot of problems within the Ukrainian military, especially when it comes to manpower mobilization. But also in the West, to get rid of this, Russia has already lost sense, and finally mobilize things, because we have the situation under which Russia has reached a peak of its capacity as defense manufacturer, and also it reached a peak of their allies being able to provide them with materials or lots of things. North Korea, Iran, probably China in some sort. And meanwhile, Europe, particularly Europe, hasn't started in anything yet. We're still far behind in this production capacity and all those things. And it will take a lot of time. So it's buying time. It's a buying time against the odds of this escalation management, of this fear of provoking Putin, of this reluctance to take necessary and complicated decisions. So it's buying time. It's buying probably one more year to make necessary decisions to produce weapons and get advantage of Russia and deal a decisive defeat, and come to negotiations probably from the position of strength, not for the position of weakness, and decide on the war and peace. Yeah.
And of all the pieces of equipment and weaponry that is included in this aid package, is it the ATACMS that are actually going to be most significant for taking the fight to Russia?
Yeah, it's rumors have it that many lawmakers in the U.S. they included this provision into the bill, and rumors have it that Americans started preparing aid packages long before the bill was approved, in order to send it as soon as possible, because the time is running very short. We've come to this situation. I don't get it why the most powerful country in the world, the most powerful decision makers in the world, only act fast when it's like when the situation is getting close to being absolutely critical. It's like taking the time before it's really bad. But nonetheless, we rumors have it that yes, ATACMS are coming here, and again, in many ways, this bill is a breakthrough in terms of multiple red lines in terms of weapon types being sent to Ukraine, such as ATACMS, the same ATACMS that were like a no-go zone for many many months, and they actually ended up being sent to Ukraine in a very obsolete form, and Ukraine ended up using them and getting insane results with the Russian airfields in occupied Crimea, with Russian airfields wiped out by these obsolete ATACMS. And the sky is not falling on the earth, and no nuclear weapons are being applied in this. No nuclear holocaust is happening. What happens is Russia sustaining a heavy blow on their military capacity and their ability to go on. So yeah, rumors have it that we are getting advanced types of ATACMS, which are absolutely necessary in terms of disrupting Russian war machine from beyond the front line, undermining their effort to support this, which is essential for this war. It's just in many ways this bill is one more step towards the logic of not only helping Ukraine go on, but also applying these mechanisms of how the war works in terms of undermining Russia's ability to go on, which is how you win wars. You don't win wars by simply staying on the same level. You win wars by denying your adversary of means and ability to go on. That's how you do.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because, since the vote on Saturday to approve this package of aid, there's been a kind of sigh of relief in the Western world. But what you hope doesn't happen is that people therefore think, okay, great, America provided a load of aid. That's it. That's enough. And actually, it's really important for other countries, other Ukrainian allies, notably Europe, to also step up and provide aid. And it's interesting, the arguments that you were describing there, Ilya, about, sending ATACMS that used to be made of we don't want escalation, etc. Those are the same arguments you hear being made in Germany, for example, about sending Taurus missiles. But I'm sure you would like to see Taurus missiles also deployed in Ukraine.
Of course, we do, and in many ways, the good news is about this the success of this defense aid bill is that in many ways European allies looked to the Washington D.C. in terms of their readiness and what they do next. In terms of should we follow, what should we do in this. It's a bit of a two factions about this. So one side says that we got to look up to the United States of America in terms of their next strategy, and maybe if they are walking out of this, maybe we should think about our own defense too about this, if Americans have given up on Europe, on the European defense. Another thing says that if Americans are walking out of this, maybe we should step up and assume more responsibility, assume more leadership about this, because America has um, the perfect chance to to enjoy this planet isolation. Meanwhile, it's Europeans against against Vladimir Putin and his enhanced war machines, and there is not much help outside of this. And Europe spent decades basically getting demilitarized because of the decades of peace, of course. So yeah, I think in many ways what's happening in the United States right now, it's another painful and hard and very unnecessary struggle towards getting rid of this escalation management logic that never worked. It doesn't really work. you know I really hope, and many of us here in Ukraine really have a hope of decision makers just assessing the experience of the previous months of the war and finally understanding that escalation management doesn't work. Giving Putin a chance to walk out of this war and save his face doesn't work. What works is the providing Ukraine with means to deny Russia's ability to go on. It's the only way. When you step out, when you try to be nice to Putin, when you try to avoid responsibility, when you try to avoid complicated decisions and probably risky decisions that don't end up being that risky but necessary, you just give Putin even more space to advance and to walk further. So that's the way it works. Denying him space, denying him chance and ability to go on is the only way. So hopefully that's going to work in this regard. But the most essential thing is that, yeah, we are glad that this is happening, because the situation is not really not good in the front line, especially in the front line. And I would say that in many ways, given the extreme critical lack of munitions in basically all types of munitions, all classes of weaponry right now here in Ukraine, it's a miracle that we haven't lost more over these months of critical delays in aid, because we lost Avdiivka, we lost several small towns in Donbass, and thanks God, and it's only because and thanks to insane heroism by the Ukrainian military, and also the use of substitutes such as FPV weaponry, FPV drones, other weapon types that somehow mitigate the lack of munitions, but also the motivation and the enthusiasm of the military, that we haven't lost more. And it's not really about the land, but about losing people, capacities to go on, and it's just a miracle that we are where we are now right now, given all the critical lack. So kudos to the Ukrainian military. They again and again
Yeah.
they do something that was seemingly impossible, but still they do this somehow. I don't know why.
I want to come on and talk about your new book in just a moment, Ilya, but just finally on the aid package. Do you think it will allow Ukraine to, for example, launch a counteroffensive this year, or is that just wildly optimistic? Is the priority for the time being just holding on to as much territory as possible?
Yeah, it's. I don't think that we are going over the top this year. Situation is very far from being that optimistic. But at the same time, I think as painful as it is, but we have, and we came to this understanding many months ago in Ukraine, that we are switching to absolute defense, absolute and total defense, and standing where we are right now. Absolute priority is the fixing the problems with the Ukrainian military, especially when it comes to mobilization. And everybody talks about the failing mobilization. In many ways, it happens because of a lot of mistakes made by the Ukrainian military and Ukrainian leadership and governments in terms of brutal methods that they were applied, but also because of natural reasons. Because it's 2024. We were supposed to fly cars right now. We were supposed to go tourism on the moon. You're not supposed to have a World War II style mobilization in modern society in the age of Netflix, AI, food delivery apps. It's just not the way modern society works, not the way, especially when it comes to the vibrant country and a very enthusiastic country in terms of making money and, moving around the world. So it's just really mobilization of World War One style things are not very good with modern society. So it's Ukraine obviously struggles to mobilize people, even more people in this. But also, this year is about holding on to what we have right now, and not only in terms of territory. You know, it's about um, degrade, keeping Russian military degrading with insane losses that they have. With all the spending that they have and proportionate spending, keeping them exhausted, trying to save as much manpower, as much power as possible in this. Fortifications is something that we talk 24 hours about. And also, general stability behind the lines, economy, trying to get the economy as possible. Because again, mobilization, yeah, it's really easy to say that all Ukrainian males should be mobilized to the front line and fight, which is something that is, that's real. But at the same time, it's about having a budget filled in. It's about having jobs, stability inside the country. In general, societal stability in this. So it's really complicated thing. So mostly it's about degrading Russia and staying where we are right now. and also saving electrical grid, infrastructure in general, keeping the nation running and working. So it's far more complicated than it sounds. Of course, when it comes to Ukraine being able to launch large counteroffensive operations, maybe we talk about the next year, because the year 2025 is this is something that many people in the military talk about, and many analysts talk about, is that it's going to be the year where Russia draws near to a point where it generally exhausts the endless bottom of Soviet supplies. No, all Soviet machinery, um, lots of things that they have as a Soviet legacy, and it will have to switch on its own production, which is still far behind its needs in such a war in which it spends so much with so little results. So maybe if we have all the aid coming in, if we have all the appropriate weapons, if we have decided on our own problems, and including our own defense production, which is still possible, and many things are being done in terms of launching Ukrainian own defense production too, behind the lines, inside the country, with innovative methods of production, and also abroad in European countries on Ukrainian with Ukrainian manufacturing capabilities. Maybe we'll be able to counterattack on degraded and exhausted Russia next year. But right now, in what many people talk about is this year is decisive in terms of Ukraine being able to go through this and get another chance to not to repeat the last year's failed counteroffensive, but to do it a smarter way with more support and then more resolve from the international backers, because you can't really go on this way. This is not the way you win wars. So yeah.
Let's go on to your new book. It's called I Will Show You How It Was, the story of wartime Kyiv. Just give us a sense of what you're aiming to achieve with this book, Ilya.
um the battle, it's about the battle of Kiev from 2022, and the sense of it, and the my aim with this is the following. I really wanted to write a book about the Battle of Kiev because I was inside that battle, from day one to the last day, and I really wanted it. It really had a huge imprint on my life and on myself and on my work, and I really wanted to have a book about this because I believe that was the most pivotal and the most important event of this war. The Russian defeat at Kiev, a very unexpected defeat at Kiev 2 years ago. And initially, I wanted to write a standard military history book about this, maps, arrows, fancy military words. But I decided that there are lots of people who would do this much better than me, frankly. And I decided that I I'm better off talking about things that stay behind the headlines in the news and all those things, like maps and arrows, which is, human lives and emotions. What regular people in that situation, just like you and me, what they do and what they feel in such a unbelievably unique situation that in our time and age we have in Europe, in the heart of Europe, we have um, a capital city, an ancient capital city of an ancient kingdom, and a vibrant country being attacked in World War II style in a blitzkrieg operation by an extremely hostile power. Basically, it's like something that we read from World War One books, World War Two books, just happening in our world, just in our world. And I really wanted to put this from the perspective of very usual people just like you and me, because it's much more terrifying and much more dramatic than what you see in the news, because it's about your life, just your life, and friends and your friends. It's about things that you have to reevaluate the quiet happiness of going to office for work and seeing your colleagues every day and sipping your coffee. It's ending. It's the end of this. It's the things like your ability to take a walk in the street and see the streets of the city you love. And war comes, and you just you try and imagine mass graves just next to a church, next to your house, for instance, or mass graves on a parking lot next to your supermarket. This is what happens. Just like you, just trying to take a walk in the street in your city and try and imagine all those things. Your own city lying in ashes. So I decided to show what regular people do, and they do incredible things. They make incredible moral choices of standing up to the evil, and actually in our time and age, taking up the fight against the no chances of success. To me, the climax of this battle was the moment when, I think that was on February 25th, 2022, when people, just regular people in the streets of Kyiv, they were getting their Kalashnikov rifles from the police because we thought that Russians are coming from the north and they will enter the city soon. So very regular people, just like you and me, were getting their rifles to fight in the streets, and many were obviously seeing the Kalashnikov rifles for the first time in their lives. Yet they were doing this. So I wanted to show the spirit and how much was at stake and how awesome this city is. How unjust and absurd this war, because we have a vibrant, not ideal, but very ancient city with lots of history, city of immigrants and migrants from around the country and also from other parts of the world, in pursuit of happiness. And we have this siege, this war, absurd war, terrible war with lots of brutalities. I'm also talking about days when we were entering Bucha following the Russian defeat as journalists. I'm also telling what was seen there. So I wanted to show this tragedy, this absolutely unnecessary tragedy that happened to this, and to the city, and also to the military, to the young guys and girls who had to die to stop this, who also wanted to be alive, who wanted to have children, enjoy life every day, but they had to die fighting to stop this horde from the most insanely stupid and criminal war of our time. So I wanted to simply show what what do you feel, what do you see as a regular guy living in the country, in the city under siege, and with and when you what do you feel as you see that, with this hope, with this enthusiasm, and this rage of the doomed, you get the success, you get the victory. Very uneven victory, because as you remember from those days, half of the world was burying Ukraine alive, expecting Kiev to fall within like between 48 or 72 hours. But yet, and this is something that we fall short now in these days, with hope, with enthusiasm, when do it when with doing what is right, we get the success. So this is what the book is about, generally.
You mentioned a moment ago earlier Bucha,
Hmm.
and correct me if I'm wrong, but you live in Bucha now, do you
Yeah,
not?
yeah, I do.
What is life like in Bucha now? Because obviously we all remember the horrific scenes of a couple
Yeah,
of years
I
ago.
must
What
say
is life
that
like there now?
Bucha has always been, well, not always, but for many years, Bucha has been one of the best places to live in the whole Kiev area. Bucha, Irpin, Hostomel in the lesser degree, but this triangle became the worst, the scene of the worst battles and also atrocities of Russia, because Russians were trying to break through this satellite cities of Kiev and break through the Irpin River and make it into Kiev. So right now, when the Battle of Kiev was over, I remember someone, I think there was a photographer from the West. I don't remember who. who that was, but she said that from now on, this place Bucha is basically you know it's tainted. It's tainted with this with over everything that happened in here because when we entered Bucha, we saw a lot of burnt dead bodies, mass graves with dozens of bodies in there. Uh, Lots of people shot dead and lying in the streets for days and weeks before the Ukrainian coming. And in general, what I remember from entering Bucha following Russian withdrawal with this sense of rot in the air. It was terrible thing. You could feel it. This sometimes this energy of really bad things happening in here. It stays for some time. This bad energy. It was really depressing. But and one of the photographers said that it's going to be here forever because it's like the place is cursed right now. And you know what? This journalist was wrong. Was absolutely wrong because the spring came following the withdrawal of Russians. The spring came within days after the Russian defeat and withdrawal. Literally thousands of cars were lining up to get back to Bucha. All the people who fled. And spring comes, sunny weather comes. Moms got back to walking in parks in Bucha again, and life prevailed over this smell of death that we saw. Well, life prevailed, and a lot of things, positive things happening, like rebuilding of many things. Lots of businesses got reopened and with their own money. Um, in general, I've been living in Bucha for more than a year, and my girlfriend lives with me. She's absolutely happy to live there here because it's the place where a lot of bad things happened, but also a place where life really prevailed. One of the symbols of this is in general, Bucha is a very beautiful place. It's like a town in the woods. A really good a really good place to live. When you like have a work in Kyiv in like large, vibrant city, concrete jungle, and you get back to the sincerity and clean air of Bucha in the woods. And one of the symbols of this resurrection and the victory of life is this Vokzalna Street. It became worldwide famous with these pictures of really long line of Russian destroyed Russian vehicles, just the entire street of Russian vehicles because a Russian convoy was absolutely desolated in there. I remember also seeing this, and you take like an hour walking among all these burnt armored vehicles, lots of legs, ripped off legs and arms of Russian soldiers in there, just knee deep in ashes. The entire street absolutely vaporized, and right now it was absolutely completely renovated, and it looks like a very good Swedish or Norwegian street in some Norwegian Norwegian town. Very clean, very beautiful. You could see it on the internet, and I drive there almost every single day, and I absolutely can't believe that it's the same place where so much death and destruction was seen like 2 years ago. So in many ways, Bucha has become this international symbol of death, of absolutely horrible things that we saw. But also right now, and I try to show Bucha as much as I can on social media, the views of Bucha, because it's the symbol, and also the symbol of resurrection. Life always prevails. It's also one of the things that I talk about in this book. Life always wins.
That's a really good note to end on. Ilya, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you. The
Thank
book is
you.
called I Will Show You How It Was, the story of wartime Kyiv. Ilya, thank you so much for joining us today on
Thank
Frontline.
you. Thank you.
Thank you for watching Frontline for Times Radio. For more on global security and the war in Ukraine, you can listen to Times Radio, take out a digital subscription to the Times, and click subscribe on our YouTube channel.